be unlocking the potential of automation in finance. And I will just start off by making a few comments, which I'm sure will resonate well with the session. And but before I start, I would really like to warmly welcome all of you participants, as well as a very warm welcome to the EdgeVerve team, an Infosys company. And we are very thankful to you, Guru Raj and team, for having taken time out to really anchor this session, because I think it is most relevant today. And, we all say that finance without technology is something which is, an incomplete, cycle. But really speaking, I would think finance and automation today, the lines dividing these two, if ever I call it, is also blurring. And I think it has also really accelerated the symbiotic relationship of finance and automation in many ways. We have many tools which have actually, got launched, whether it is blockchain, whether it is RPA, whether it is AI, whether it is ML even. But I would say the organic development of these tools have really got accelerated, by COVID. So in a sense, I don't know whether I should compliment COVID. I wouldn't dare say that. But in a way, I think all these tools, the adoption of the tools, have really got accelerated because of this pandemic. And I would also touch upon, post the COVID impact, what are the changes which have actually impacted the business? One is work from home. You can see all of us are working from home. All of us have logged in from home, and we need to run our businesses working from home. So I think automation becomes a very, I think, important and significant element in this whole thing. Productivity becomes another measure. Even if we are scattered all across the city or all across the country, even, how do we maintain productivity? And with productivity also comes least cost, because everyone is actually struggling to really maintain profitability. So we also need to maintain least cost lever. And at the same time, if you really look at it, automation can actually help us in different ways. Let me just touch upon two dimensions. One is the front facing user experience. That is something which is very important today, because if the consumer has gone digital, the user experience also has to be seamless. And then, of course, we have the back end, which is really the core accounting, platforms. We will talk a lot about accounting because this session will focus upon that, finance. Last but not the least is reporting and analytics, because that is also equally important. And I think these three platforms will be touched upon by all the speakers, in a short while. Just a last one before I sign off and hand over to Mr. Gururaj Deshpande, who will deliver the keynote address. We should also perhaps, in the fireside chat, we will touch upon what impact automation has on roles and responsibilities within the finance function. What is really the talent and skill impact? What are really some controls and compliance issues that we may face? Some kind of hierarchical impact as well, because automation will also bring in SOD challenges, organization structure. See, some of these things are very important dimensions when automation is absorbed in the respective business. So without much ado, I would now invite Mr. Gururaj Deshpande, who's the CEO of EdgeVerve, to deliver the keynote address. And I'm sure, he will deliver an impactful thing, address, which will make us accelerate changes in our respective businesses. Over to you, Gururaj. Thank you.
Thank you, Ganesh, so much for setting that context so very well. And thanks to the whole CII team, Ganesh, yourself, Deepak, Geetika, many more, for giving us at EdgeVerve this opportunity. I think it's a very relevant topic to talk about, and we were just sharing notes at the beginning of this session. And the whole aspect of how does a business achieve resilience using automation and AI is becoming so much main stage during this crisis, and we thought it pertinent to share a few thoughts around this. So we just jump in right away. A quick introduction to EdgeVerve. If any of you didn't know about EdgeVerve, EdgeVerve is a products company of Infosys, fully owned by Infosys. We are a 6-year-old company, and our current purpose and passion is about automation and AI. Right. So the reason we exist is to help drive digital transformation for our clients using the full power, through the products that we create on automation and AI. So broadly, we deliver automation, the power of accelerating digital transformation through automation. We have a product suite that we call as Assist Edge. Again, Assist Edge not only automates processes, but also helps discover, which is the early part of the automation cycle, and then all the way to orchestrating processes, marketplaces, and stuff. Right. So that's one broad of the product portfolio. We have an underlying AI platform that we have built over the years that we call as Infosys Nia. And what we are using Nia today is to power a lot of a business transformation on the business applications side. So what we are doing is picking up specific problem statements within enterprises, right? So there are many problems in demand and fulfillment, or in sourcing and procurement, or in finance and accounting. So we've taken some of these big bets, and we are developing products that fit within the realm of what we call as applied AI, right? So they go and solve a specific problem in an enterprise using the full power of AI. So that's the amplification part of the business possibilities, and I'll talk through a little bit of that. EdgeVerve has 360 plus active client relationships today. A good number, 65% plus, are G2K enterprise customers. Very proud, just as with the Infosys group, about the customer retention rate. And we are global, just as our parent company Infosys, right? So 140 plus clients is what we work with today. This is all about resilience, right? So I thought we should probably go back a little bit in time and look at disruption, right? And clearly, business disruption is not a new phenomenon. What we are living through seems like so mammoth in proportion, but if we just race back into history, there have been disruptions, right, coming in through various shapes and forms, and we have listed only a few here, just to set the context around this. But clearly, history tells us that every often there comes along a crisis and thereby business disruption. Of course, the trigger itself could be very different, right? This time it is the pandemic causing the business disruption. And there was a point in time when technology created business disruption for many players. Then there were times when systemic failures created disruption, right? As we witnessed through the global financial crisis. So the triggers can be different. The way a crisis unfolds can be different, but also there is a certain commonality around how to deal with disruption. And what disruption brings to corporates is they tend to become big inflection points in the history of these businesses, right? So they can be make or break for businesses. And as Mark Twain said, history never repeats itself, but it often rhymes. And in this graphic, you will often see that there is a certain rhyming nature around crisis, right? And it was also Charles Dickens who appropriately said, it was the best of times and the worst of times. He was not talking about business disruption, but it is so well appropriate that a crisis can either bring out the best of you as a company, or you may struggle, right? I think many companies we can learn, go back, when we look at this graphic here, the Great Depression brought out the best among many companies. And when I read about this, I have read that companies like Kellogg's made the best use of the depression. They doubled their ad spends. They invested in the workers, the productivity. I mean, these were big concepts back in, say, 1929. But companies like that have been trendsetters, and their profits thereby rose 30%. That was one example through what they did. And more closer, 82, whenever we saw the debt crisis unfold, many companies, I think, made the best use and could thrive around that. And of course, we are all so very familiar with what happened during the dot-com bubble, right? Most of us were already working by then, and we kind of witnessed it very close by. And we saw companies that could perish. We saw companies that had to pivot, right? So take a company like, say, Priceline. They were so focused on travel, but come the crisis, come the bust, they realized we have to start pivoting and slowly move away from say an airline model to focusing on hotels, make some big acquisitions, or even company like Amazon back in during the dot-com bust that happened. They were still a struggling company, but those days saw the emergence of models like say AWS, right? Those were the starting points of what we today know as AWS. Or you could even look at how airlines adopted to whatever was happening, and many airlines took different paths. Some of them did fleet simplifications, some of them took the opportunity to expand the number of routes at that point of time. And even Apple for that matter, right? Different companies responded differently. And the global financial crisis for that matter was a crisis of trust. And like I said, the triggers were very different, and the companies responded in a very different way. Banks took the element of trust as their whole differentiator, and they said we will only sell now trustworthy products through my branches, for example. That could be a strategy in itself. So many companies did very differently. Many startups were born during the whole crisis. For example, Uber, Airbnb were actually born during the 2008 2009 period, and we know them of good large companies. And but guess what? The story is not yet over, right? In fact, just last week there was this video of the Airbnb CEO talking about how pivoting continues to be mainstream for them, right? And in that example, Airbnb has been so disrupted because nobody's traveling or consuming any of these accommodations, and a company like Airbnb has had to significantly pivot to using their platform to offer online experiences now, right? Unlike accommodation. So clearly, a crisis creates new needs, and with COVID-19, again, it's a very similar situation where a lot of change is being thrust on people right now and on companies right now. So what the past tells us is this was, of course, a McKinsey a briefing note that came through during the COVID time. The top 20% of companies that emerged from the recessions were the ones with a very, very strong business resilience strategy, which means they didn't stumble upon it. They didn't just pass through the crisis, without winking an eyelid, but they really had to think through about a very, very strong strategy around business resilience, right? And what sets these companies apart is speed. They take a very customer value centric approach, right? What does my company represent as value to the external world, right? And I'm focusing on solving that customer problem at that point of time as I go through the crisis, and that will help me sustain my revenue growth, right? So they also make forward looking business choices. So they not only move faster and harder, they look at productivity, and they kind of preserve the whole growth capacity, right? So in this study, of course, there were some numbers shared compared to the companies that don't have a very resilient strategy. These companies increase revenue by 30%, or their operating costs reduced by a matter of 3x, right? And of course, none of this is really new to any of us here. I think it's just reiterating the importance of a resilient business strategy. So right now, where we are, COVID has been impacting us in so many different ways, right? Right from the way we mix with people, the way consumers consume services, the way companies provide services. There's been a lot of change in our life if we just go back in the last 3-4 months itself. And thereby, I think we have been forced to look at these multiple ways that companies can emerge stronger out of the crisis, right? And the strategy that I spoke about is what will actually differentiate the winners from the losers. And we see already some of that playing out as we speak, right? So what constitutes resilience? Let me just spend a few minutes on this. And as you can again see here on the slide, it's like a three-legged tripod, you could say, right? And a good resilience strategy is underpinned by all of these, and not one of these can outweigh the other in some sense, right? One is the whole process and cost efficiencies that can be driven at this point of time. It kind of becomes paramount when you pass through a crisis like this. On, are you the most efficient? Have you taken the most cost out? How agile and nimble is your process, right? And how straight through is your process, and things like that. Or it could be around agility, right? How can an enterprise react to a crisis? How quickly can I adopt newer business models? In the example that I spoke about, the whole Airbnb example, the CEO was talking about how they pivoted their whole product portfolio in just about 14 days, right? In 2 weeks. And these are not easy things to do, but that's what it takes to stay resilient, right? As far as your business is concerned. And also the whole aspect of creating business differentiators that can significantly push the growth forward, right? What do I use? How do I pivot to bring a differentiator into my business so that my growth can see a significant uptick during this time? And the good news, as far as we at EdgeVerve look at this whole paradigm around resilience, is that AI and automation as broad technology levers, how can it play to these three levers? And it has a significant applicability to all of these three levers, right? I spoke about the whole change in the businesses that are happening as we speak through COVID. But I think what is very prevalent across any kind of business, any sector you take for that matter, is around how automation and AI can be a huge catalyst to make a difference to this business. So what's going to happen? What is specific about this COVID crisis is, as more and more business goes touch free, it goes virtual. There'll be a lot more data that's getting generated in this whole digital economy. There is a lot more amplification that will happen around the man-machine interface that we often refer to, right? Machines playing a significant part, working along with humans as part of this whole digital economy. And the whole reimagination of process, I think, becomes mainstream. So companies will take the opportunity to pick up each of their processes and almost rethink and lay it out in a new avatar, which includes the usage of significant technology, bots, digital workers, and cognitive capabilities. Right. So just to close the topic, if you take a technology like robotic process automation, of course, has been around for a while, but it kind of gets pushed into the mainstream, almost leaving no choice for people that want to create a resilient enterprise, right? How can you significantly raise the volume of things that you do? How can you process significant number of claims faster? How do you significantly deliver better touch-free customer kind of service? How do you empower your workforce and things like that, right? So that is on the RPA side. Now, if you look at AI as a very critical enabler, that the whole aspect of AI has now come from being something that was present in a research lab to now becoming a very critical enabler that businesses can use, right? So AI again has been spoken about in different contexts, but I think what this crisis will do is to bring it significantly into the mainstream, right across all processes, be it HR, onboarding, service. We have seen chatbots, planning, forecasting, anything for that matter. So again, playing out both on the efficiency side as well as on the differentiation side. And the good news is, while AI has been around for a while, it has significantly matured to reach a particular inflection point right now, right? So there is better understanding of voice, of emotions, of handwriting recognition, tonality, body language. The AI is today in a position to analyze and interpret all of this at an accuracy level that can be considered very, very acceptable by businesses, right? So legacy capabilities in this crisis will be pushed beyond capacity. And I'll give you an example of that, right? So a typical bank today can only process or originate loans up to a certain level. So their process is built to a certain level. But what happened, right, in the US, if you look at it, right, there was a big push to get small, medium businesses to survive. So there was a big push to hand out loans very quickly. And suddenly banks were left with a huge pile of these loans, which had to be processed almost overnight. And we ourselves at EdgeVerve, we were in the middle of such opportunities. And what we could do was bring in AI, almost overnight. And this is something we did in a matter of 3 to 4 days. We worked with banks to look at all of their applications coming in, process it in a touch-free way, and let AI do the decisioning around, was this a worthy loan to be giving out to a small business at that point of time. So that's just one small example of how a traditional business can be pushed to its capacity in a crisis, and how an AI can come in to solve that problem almost at a very short notice. Right? Of course, as we bring in AI, we have to deal with the problems of fairness, accountability, transparency. This is like the fat trinity, as I call it, right? So these are aspects, of course, a business will have to deal with as businesses start bringing in more and more capabilities around these things. So clearly, we are at an AI inflection point, and I think the crisis will drive people to consume a lot of this, and the smarter businesses will actually consume a lot of this as part of their resilient strategy making. So I'll just close with a couple of slides. Again, there is a deep dive. Shrikant will cover use cases. The fireside chat will cover some specific applications within the the finance world and from a perspective of CFO. But what are those few AI game changers that we are seeing, right? How will enterprises get disrupted in the next, say, 1 to 2 years through AI? The first one that we often run into, and we are seeing it across the board, is how much value is locked in enterprise documents. It could be contracts, it could be pricing documents, so on and so forth, right? And large enterprises typically deal with thousands or even millions of documents. How do you unlock hidden value from these documents, right? And we are working through some very interesting applications around it. It could be either getting lawyers to be more efficient, or reducing just the sheer number of lawyers you would need in a team to interpret contracts and stuff, all the way to unlocking value in documents. You have pricing rules embedded. How do you take all of that out? Maybe you're losing money out on the table, maybe you're leaving money out on the table, not able to reconcile your pricing rules with what's actually happening out there, or even billing disputes, or parts information that's hidden in documents. That's like a huge variety of stuff that is stored in documents in a traditional format. How do you bring all of that and make that not just cost efficient but also a differentiator for the business, right? So we've done that kind of work. The other paradigm shift that's happening is around outcome-based AI spends. In a very traditional software world, enterprises had to go and spend money upfront to consume byproducts, and then the ROI was always questionable. But now what's happening is the market is ready, and the early differentiators that the companies are pushing through are looking at how do I amplify value realization with a focus on success. For example, for one of the banks that we deployed an AI product for, we helped them improve their whole collections. And what happened was the way the sale was made, we only got paid if the profitability of their loan portfolio went up. So there was a benchmark established, and the good news was that we could actually hit 1.5x of the committed loss savings in this particular instance. So you can construct some very smart, intelligent ways where the sell actually becomes so compelling around an AI product, right? So that's one thing we are seeing. Explainability and interpretability, I spoke about it. As AI gets consumed, prediction has to be explainable. Say if you're originating a loan, you have to be able to explain why the AI system actually took a decision like that, right? So it can't be a black box. So these are clearly trends emerging around auditability, fairness that I spoke about. The other big part is AI is now getting spread across the whole value chain, and we should not be a resilient enterprise should not be looking at AI as something that is just piecemeal, right? I just look at this process in a very myopic manner, and I will just bring in the flavor of AI around it. But I think it's all about looking at a whole connected value chain, right from in that particular example again, right from finding a client, finding a good lead, to converting the client, to originating the loan, for example, and servicing the loan, and then also collecting the loan in a very efficient manner. So that's one example of a value chain, and an AI done rightly should spread across the whole value chain, as against just a very tactical implementation with a siloed data set or a point analytics or something like that, right? The last part is again supply chain transformation. We are seeing this unfold through COVID right now. Visibility on your supply chain, inventory, the agility around it, the demand patterns, thereby the product launches and stuff like that. So I think these are broad game changes we are seeing. And again, I don't have all the time to go through in a lot of detail, but I just wanted to leave you with a flavor of that. And similarly, what are those game changers we are seeing in a automation world, right? What are those that will disrupt enterprises in 1 to 2 years? I spoke a little bit about process discovery, and it will come up in the course of conversation as well. A lot of automation that has happened in the last few years has been about just doing automation for the sake of it, right? Companies have picked up a process that somebody thought was right for automation. They tried a product, but guess what? The ROI was not there. Right? So clearly, the automation journey has to start earlier. You have to go back into the whole value chain of automation in that sense. You have to look at, is this the right process? Is this does this make sense in my enterprise? Right? Is there a standard definition established around this process, the whole blueprint, and thereby you work downwards from there, starting with process discovery. So today we have the tools available to do process discovery, process mining, and then kind of make a very intelligent plan for what automation can do for your business. And again, outcome-based models, even here in the case of automation as well, as I spoke with AI, we are today pushing a lot of gain share models. People don't have to worry about buying 100 bots or whatever number of bots with an upfront investment. But we come in, again, this is work we have done with some of the largest companies. In this instance, it was with an agricultural equipment manufacturer. We came in, we agreed on a gain share model, set up an automation COE, and you start bringing in a lot of enterprise processes into the COE, and you start deploying over a period of time. And again, you get paid as and when the savings will accrue and when people get released from whatever work they are doing at that point of time. The other aspect around enterprise automation is around scalability. It is not easy to scale up automation in an organization, right? And in this example, what we have done is with a very leading health tech leader, we have optimized their entire F&A processes. This space used to see about 300, 350 people, but over a span of about 24 months or so, we have completely changed their whole landscape in terms of the FMDA process and automated their 140 processes. And today we run about 500 plus bots as part of that whole process landscape. So scalability is not easy. Only when an organization understands complexity, starts with the right identification of the process, the discovery, then you can kind of scale the whole aspect of automation in an enterprise. Right? Reliability has to be always key. Again, as we saw in the case of this shipping company, extremely complex process. The everybody inclusive of the CDO, everybody downward believe this is a process that just cannot be automated. It is far too complex. Uh, Nobody can automate this complex system of mine. But guess what? Again, starting with the right approach, you need, of course, a right product that can scale and be reliable and it doesn't fall off with workload or the number of steps. In this example, there were 600 process steps, and this was about container booking and dispatch and planning. And reliability thereby kind of becomes such a key factor of the whole automation journey, and that's what can make or break an automation choice of the product as well. Right. The last point, the whole tactical to strategic, I spoke about it. As the landscape evolves towards intelligent automation, you have to take a more broader perspective of things, not tactical, not just one process, but it has to be a journey. So you start with the simplest, very rule-based automation. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. That's the deterministic aspect, all the way to intelligent automation, or what we call as now a human in the loop. So there is digital workers, there is humans, there is a clear handoff between the two, and in our parlance we now call it as automation singularity. Right? How do these human and digital workers coexist within the whole ecosystem? How do you use all the cognitive capabilities that I earlier spoke about, right? Be it handwriting recognition, voice, tonality, whatever. There are so many of these capabilities available. How do you bring all of that into an automation singularity? I think that's also going to be make or break for a resilient strategy in my view. Let me just stop there. I know time is limited, but hopefully I give you a gist of the exciting possibilities that automation and AI throw up in front of an enterprise today, and what can the decision makers in an organization do to take all of these levers and make the most of the crisis that is unfurling right now. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Guru Raj, for that excellent insights into what technology can do to actually transform your business. And I think you touched upon the right aspects. Business disruption is not end of the world. It actually makes you recreate something more powerful for your respective businesses. And I think technology is the one which will give you that edge in the business resilience aspect. And I think with that beautiful backdrop that Guru Raj presented, I will now hand over to Mr. Shrikant Dev, who will now talk to us about automation in the CFO world. And very interesting, a couple of case studies would also be discussed and presented to us. So over to Mr. Shrikant Dev.
Thanks, Ganesh. I hope I am audible clearly.
Yes, you are, yeah. Shrikant.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so thanks a lot, first of all, CII, Ganesh and team for inviting us to cover this very, very important topic And I think Guru has set the context really well in terms of why AI and automation is going to be, it's no longer going to be a sort of a nice to have or a complementary thing for CFO function, but it is going to be the crucial part of their world and their job. Okay. So what I'm going to do in the next around 20 odd minutes is to actually take it bit one level down and very specific about the CFO world, the finance and accounting as a function, and talk about how automation drives and is going to drive this function completely. Okay. So what I will do in the next 20 minutes is, one is, of course, I will talk about why F&A needs RPA, although I don't think I really need to repeat this. But another important point, I believe, which is crucial for the CFO function, is that while the CFO role and the CFO organization, of course, has to understand the role of automation and AI in their function, in their jobs, they also are responsible usually to assign the budgets and approve the budgets for the RPA and AI projects within their organization. So what I will be covering very briefly is also about how can what are the different aspects of the ROI, the return on investment, that typically an RPA program brings in. Then we will talk about the automation opportunities specific to the finance and accounting, and I will cover the very specific use cases. And last but not the least, as Ganesh also mentioned, I will cover some very interesting case studies on how automation has helped the organization, not just in saving maybe operational costs and people costs, but fundamentally reimagining their business with the power of technology. Okay? So that's what is going to be the agenda for this session. So starting, obviously, F&A function has continued to have several challenges, and especially the recent business impacts and business disruptions that do also very elaborately talked about also raise a lot of questions. But primarily issues in F&A continue to remain that the processes are simple, complex. There is a lot of legacy infrastructure that the organization still have to carry about. And the human operations usually include a lot of error handling and hence a lot of rework that happens. The errors are also in the data, which again cause a lot of rework, and all of these issues usually result in a lot of effort, a lot of rework effort, a lot of redundant effort that goes on, but it also impacts the business directly. Okay, either in terms of the quality of the accounting that happens, or in terms of being able to manage the finances better, and most importantly, as Guru mentioned, about the agility of the business to handle the different business disruptions. Because of all these current challenges that F&A has, the ability for the business to handle these disruptions also become a challenge. So how can the organization address some of these challenges? And of course, automation is one of the key technologies that we strongly believe that can help address some of these issues. And the reasons for that, and I will also cover some of these in detail, is first and foremost, automation, when they execute business processes, they are primarily a repetitive sort of process handling, which ensures that there are very less data and operational errors. And obviously that means that there is a high level of accuracy in the handling of the F&A operations. And that in turn can lead to streamlining of some of these processes, which can lead to cost savings and improved return on investments on some of these projects. End-to-end automation can also eliminate some of the data leaks, and I will actually talk about some of the examples of some of our clients who have utilized the power of automations to not just about cost and operational savings, but also about fundamentally changing their business processes and also helping some of the data leaks that were happening through their processes and eliminating those. And this has been obviously confirmed by many analysts. So I've just put few quotes here from Gartner, McKinsey, and E&Y that F&A obviously is one of the most critical and important function that has already seen a lot of benefits from RPA, but will continue to see benefits from automation and AI. Okay, and some of the examples that have mentioned is data entry costs, for example. As Ian mentioned, that they have been reduced by close to 70% due to automation. So why is automation such an important technology for the F&A function? Okay. First and foremost, automation is a business user-friendly technology. Okay, it's not a very large IT program that the business has to work with IT, and it will take years and years together and hundreds and thousands of dollars or even more. It's a very simple technology that even a business group can adopt, can become comfortable with, can become familiar with, and can then deploy in their business groups. Okay. And one of the best example of that is one of our Indian clients, a financial services organization, who when we went to them, they were obviously very reluctant and uh, very doubtful about the benefit of RPA. But pretty soon, within a matter of 6 months or so, after they had implemented few processes, when they realized the power of this technology, they very quickly democratized this entire RPA implementations within their entire business group. Okay. And today, in that organization, almost the entire F&A group, almost every employee builds his or her own automations. Okay, so the technology is so easy to use and so business user friendly that the businesses can deploy it on their own and can also utilize the power of it. The second, and Guru mentioned about it, is the scalability of it. And one of the best example I'm going to talk about is the healthcare manufacturer, where literally they transformed their finance and accounting function over a period of 3 years. But what has given them is a completely business resilient, scalable operations, which they can today very proudly actually utilize across close to about 120 plus countries and close to about 5,000 plus people that they have. Okay. RPA obviously works in the existing IT infra, which means that, again, as I mentioned, it does not require a major IT project. Most importantly, bots do not make errors. Okay, so unless and until you, whatever you configure the bots to do, it will execute it exactly as it is. Which means that, and this is very relevant from a finance and accounting function, especially in the areas like account reconciliation, general ledger postings, account receivable areas, and invoice processing. What is crucial is that when the bots execute a process, they execute it exactly how they are being told. Okay, and hence the whole idea of human errors or human induced errors are significantly lesser in an automated operations. And last but not the least, obviously bots can work 24/7, which means that you can assign, and this especially comes in handy when during the crucial quarter end or month end kind of accounting processes, you can assign the bots to do throughout the day and night and complete the crucial tasks that need to be executed. So when we talk about the return on investment on an RPA or an automation program, typically the benefits usually are only looked at from a cost savings, operational cost saving. But what I wanted to highlight here is there are multiple benefits that organizations have and will continue to leverage from automation program. Okay, and when a CFO function or when any budget sort of is being looked at for an automation program, the benefits need to be looked at beyond what is obvious. Okay? So some of the benefits what we have actually seen our customers enjoying are the employee productivity. Obviously, the fact that RPA can free up crucial people who are doing some repetitive mundane tasks, and those people can be reutilized to do more human centric tasks. I mean, those require more human decision makings. As I mentioned, RPA and automation can lead to improved compliance because the whole chances of human errors or human induced errors are reduced. It also results in enhanced customer experience, and as Ganesh rightly mentioned at the beginning of the session, because the tasks are executed very quickly and accurately, the customer experience gets better because of it. RPA also, and AI especially, leads to a lot of innovation in the business processes. So I think that's another very important angle, especially in this current situation where the businesses are getting disrupted and they are looking for innovations to survive. And some of the other standard benefits like cost optimization, improving the process, having high accuracy of operations, and making the operations highly scalable. I think those are some of the other and standard benefits of RPA. But at the same time, when the CFO function looks at the RPA program costs, again, usually what is considered is only the product license cost. But what is important for the function to look at is a comprehensive total cost of ownership for the RPA program, and which includes, of course, the infrastructure cost to deploy the bots and to deploy the server infrastructure, the process discovery cost, which I think a lot of enterprises are realizing that it's an important element of the entire automation program, because while it is easy to start with one or two bots, it is crucial that to continue the scale of the automation and realize the true benefits, you need to have a scientific method of discovering new candidates, which is what the process discovery provides. Implementation costs are obvious, and license costs are also obvious, but what is also important is the maintenance cost, and that will include not just maintaining the existing automations, but also upgrading your platforms, adding new capabilities like AI, for example, to your existing automation program. So it's important that when you are tasked with looking at the overall ROI of an automation program, you look at not just the basic license cost of the product, but you also look at all the other costs as well. So with this, we will move on to the finance and accounting function, and where we believe that there is a tremendous scope for RPA, automation, and AI to contribute to the business. So we obviously the different areas of finance and accounting, whether it is accounts payable management, where there is a significant scope of the invoice claims management, the entire handling of the documents, as Guru mentioned, there is a tremendous scope of AI and automation skill that can transform these functions. On the account and bank reconciliation, we have done we have seen a huge sort of interest and need for automating some of the reconciliation related processes. On the financial review and compliance, we have seen a lot of use cases around the matching of the accounts and the data, and also creating these compliance related reports and automating these tasks. And again, the key driver there, more than the efforts, is always about the accuracy. Because especially in the compliance function, the organization want to ensure that the reports that they generate are have the right data. So they prefer the automations or the bots to do these reports. Just to touch upon few on the accounts receivable, for example, there is again a tremendous scope on the entire vendor management, vendor onboarding, KYC related sort of processes, and also around the collections. Okay, there is a very interesting work what we have done with one of our clients, where they automated the entire dunning process, which is essentially the process of sending reminders to the vendors to make the payments. They actually automated this entire process, and they also added a lot of intelligence in terms of progressively making these dunning letters more and more sort of affirmative and aggressive, okay, in the nature. So I think some of these use cases, what we have seen is while they have, of course, helped in cost reductions from an operational and process effort perspective, but more importantly, they have directly contributed to the business benefits. Okay, whether it is in terms of the additional revenue that the organizations were able to receive, or whether it is in terms of the better collections that they were able to make. And just to talk about some of these examples, as I mentioned, one of the biggest automation programs that has ever been done in the world is with this healthcare manufacturer. Okay, and this has primarily been in the F&A function. Okay, and what is very interesting in this case study is the way how this particular organizations actually took a very strategic view around the entire F&A function and decided to completely transform the function way back in almost 4 years back. Okay? And with that, they obviously chose automation and AI as the core technologies to do that. And they chose us, EdgeVerve and AssistEdge, as the key partner for that. And as what they did was they automated the processes across close to about 65 plus countries, 6 locations, 400 plus business entities. But more importantly, from an technology infrastructure point of view, all of this, the entire automation program, was done on a singular Microsoft Azure cloud. Okay, and this actually is almost like the single biggest largest cloud deployment of RPA ever to be done by any vendor. But more importantly, what they were able to achieve because of this very large scale automation program within their F&A program, within their F&A function, was that they were able to completely transform this function, make it very, very agile, make it very, very scalable, make it very, very responsive to the business changes. And while, of course, they would not have anticipated the disruptions that happened because of COVID 3 years later, but when it actually hit that organization, it was very clear that that organization was the best prepared to handle that disruption. Okay, and that was because they were completely ready with a very scalable, very agile finance and accounting operations. But to get to that stage, they had obviously invested a lot of effort, a lot of executive ownership was taken to transform the F&A function. And some of these numbers are kind of thought themselves, which is 550 plus bots are currently live. And when we say 550 plus bots, these are not like simple small bots which kind of do one report here or there. Okay, these are very complex bots, each of them doing very complex functions across their 10 plus SAP instances that they have across their enterprises. 200 plus use cases have been automated and more are in pipeline. The work continues to be in progress. And close to about 1 million hours man hours have already been saved through this program. But more importantly, as I said, this has made the entire operations very agile and very scalable. Okay. Some of the use what they have done is around payroll posting. They have completely made the payroll posting as a touchless process through automation, and they have also standardized this whole payroll posting so that the errors that used to happen or the delays that used to happen have been completely eliminated. I talked about the dunning process, and this is one of the clear area where they have not only saved the cost, but they have improved their collection ratios by close to about 21%, which resulted in close to about £6 million of annual savings. Reconciliation was also one of the important area where they significantly invested in automation and AI. And especially because, as I mentioned, they had a very complex technology infrastructure with multiple SAP instances and the BCS, their internal systems. And they had to do a huge reconciliation between these two systems. And finally, they also automated part of their revenue accounting processes, primarily focusing on the data sanity, cleansing, and eliminating all the human intervention in the data processing side. So this case study actually showcases the power of the automation in the F&A function, but more importantly, it also showcases how the function leader can really transform his or her function through a strategic investments in the AI and automation as the technology lever. What is also very important here in this particular case study was the scalability of the platform. Okay, when they chose EdgeVerve Assistage, obviously one of the key criteria was the enterprise grade readiness. What they had, and this kind of got proven over the period of 3 years when Assisted as a platform not only supported their use cases, but it also scaled up to the kind of expectations that they had. And and some of the numbers that I mentioned, 550 plus complex bots running on a singular cloud infrastructure, I think it showcases the power of the platform. Moving on, another case study I briefly mentioned about a financial services firm based out of India. I think here the interesting part is while they have obviously done automations in variety of use cases around bank book reconciliation, GST reversal and GST processing with their vendors, building a lot of management MIS reports, primarily focusing around data upload and download. Almost they looked at almost every single use case which required manual data upload and download. They have also applied automations to generate alerts for the AML applications and raise alerts around frauds and also data extraction. So while the use cases again are pretty much standard across the F&A function, what is interesting in this particular use case is, as I mentioned, is the democratization of the entire automation as a technology. So this particular client has been sort of propagating RPA as a almost like an individual employee tool. A lot of employees in this organization today are very comfortable, very familiar with the RPA as a technology. They usually build their own automations. They usually just deploy their automations and save a lot of costs and effort for themselves as well as for the organization. Another interesting case study, which is around the accounts payable, where we not only automated the accounts payable part, but we actually converted that entire process into a very agile and very scalable process. Okay, and this involved a significant amount of document processing because we had to download and process the invoices there. But I think the benefits are very clear in the sense that the entire accounts payable process is now being done by the bots today. Okay. And the last case study that I wanted to talk about is for one of the logistics measure, where the primary use case was around the order deliveries and how the entire order delivery process was a fairly manual intensive and used to take a lot of effort, was post the automation became one of their most fastest and agile processes. So with this, I think I will take a stop. What I've covered is primarily around how automation and AI can be used in the CFO and F&A function. And with this, I will hand it over to Ganesh.
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Shrikant, because after that fantastic keynote address by Gururaj, painting the strategy, the backdrop of for business, I think your presentation on how technology can be useful in the finance function was simply a great supplement. In fact, I was really impressed by some of the concepts, in healthcare, financial services, and logistics that you laid out for us. And what struck me, Shrikant, was wherever there is repetitive transactions, wherever there is complexity of transactions, I think technology is the only solution which will not resolve the functional problems, but will help you scale your business to the next level. So thank you very much for that insightful presentation. So I think we move on to the next. Although we had planned out a fireside chat and a Q&A session separately, I think due to paucity of time, we will integrate the two. What we have is, let me introduce two stalwarts out here. Uh, Satish Sitaramaya, who's the Vice President and Global Product Head for Assist Edge at EdgeVerve. Deepak Balla, who doesn't need any introduction. He's the Senior VP and Global Head Finance at Infosys. So, in a manner of speaking, we will have a product head talking to a user. So I'm sure this fireside chat will be very interesting. And for all the people who have logged in, I think in another 5 minutes you can start firing your questions. So I will also ask Deepak and Satish to take them as we go along. So over to you, Deepak and Satish, to take it to the next level. Thank you.
Thanks, Ganesh. Hi, everyone. This is Satish Sitaramaya. Delighted to be here, and thank you very much to CII for inviting us and to be part of this very special event and to share a few of the learnings that we have gained over the course of our work in automation and AI space. So thank you very much. I think before I bring in Deepak, just to set some more context around the things that has been discussed, um, digital transformation, I think we can all say is become synonym to the enterprise transformation. There is no way to transform an enterprise without actually having a well-grounded digital transformation program in place. That is one. And anytime we talk about digital transformation, the two technologies that stand out as part of that is automation and AI, right? So it's an integral part of the digital transformation story. That is the second part. And as Ganesh mentioned when he started this, COVID, if any, has accelerated this thing, and we are seeing across the globe that that people, the senior leaders in the business, and also analysts across the firm, across the analyst firms, have come out and affirmed that if any, automation and intelligent automation is going to be one of these most important investments that organizations will be doing as they move forward and kind of come out of this crisis. And there have been many senior leaders, such as Satya Nadella as well, who said that 2 years worth of digital transformation happened in 2 months, and that is quite stunning, right? So it just shows how much of the world around us has actually changed, including the way we are even doing this webinar. Everybody sitting in their own, houses, connecting and talking. It's just all around us. So what has this done? I think is really bring forth this whole concept of digital first. Right? Every organization, when they think of an activity, whether how they service their client, release their new product, how they and re-engineer their processes internally, the first question is, why can't we do it digitally? How can we really make this happen digitally? And only when we get a convincing answer that it cannot be done digital first, so probably you look at other alternative options. I think that is a fundamental change that this entire transformation in the last 6 months has done to all of us. And in that backdrop comes even automation, right? When we talk about digital workers and human workers, the question is, why not a digital worker? Why can't digital worker actually do this work? So there's so much happening. With this, let me bring my colleague and a friend, Deepak Balla, into this. And maybe Deepak, why don't you maybe share your views on how CFO's role is evolving with so much of technology changes around, and there is a constant need for CFOs to also evolve in embracing this technology.
Thanks, Satish. Good morning, folks. It's a pleasure to be here, as always. The way I look at it, Satish, there are four key imperatives that any CFO has, especially now. I mean, they were always relevant, but especially in today's world, these four imperatives are very important for them. The first is how to do more with less, which is basically you can talk about effort reduction, you can call it efficiency of the effort or whatever, how to do more with less. Second is process efficiency, which means how do I increase the throughput of my process? What used to take 7 steps before, how can do it? How can I do it in 5 steps, 4 steps, 3 steps, whatever, right? The third is digital insights. How can I get insights and convert the data into information and information into insights and power? That's the third imperative. And the fourth is how to do compliance better. I think between these four things, all my finance colleagues on the call can agree that between these four key imperatives is where the 90% of a CFO's day goes. And at least for sure, for me, these are the four things that keep me awake at night, to be honest with you. If I can manage these four well, I can sleep at peace on any given day. So these are the four things around which I feel any CFO needs to kind of pivot their entire strategy of transformation. Um, yeah, and then that's where I think all of the technologies that are available to us have been helping. And at Infosys Finance, at least we started this journey about 3 years back, and we have benefited a lot from technology over the last 3 years.
Thanks, Deepak. So I think this session is anyway around automation. So we'll zero into automation, as Ganesh said earlier as well. See, the good thing is, I think finance and accounting has been really the biggest champion of automation worldwide. And if you look at the automation industry as a whole, and if we slice and dice this by processes and functions, 25% of that is actually F&A, and everything else is comes next to that. So the amount of belief finance and accounting has put into automation is tremendous. And it is the single largest functional area that has benefited actually from automation. So how do you see automation actually playing a role in the four areas that you spoke? Obviously effort reduction, spoke of process efficiency, insight, and the other one very important is compliance as well. Right? How do you see automation really making a difference?
Examples of what we have done at Infosys, and just to underscore what you said, finance guys understand the value of money better than any other function. So anytime you show money to a CFO, his eyes start to pop up, and his mouth starts to water. Anytime you can tell him that you can do this thing with lesser cost, he'll automatically come to you. So that's why my colleagues in finance have always been very open to looking at automation. Effort reduction is very simple. You talked about it. Guru talked about it. Shrikant gave a few examples of how you can reduce the effort. For example, in our case, what we've done is we have automated the entire AP process of processing of our vendor invoices. The system automatically does a three-way match. So it takes in either a digital or a physical document. If it's a physical document, it gets scanned through OCR. It picks up all of these details automatically, compares with the PO number, goes back and checks whether the GRN has been done for it or not, and does a three-way match between PO, GRN, and an invoice. If everything matches, a straight through processing, and it does posting of the liability and automatically marks it ready for payment. And then finance guys can pick up 10%, 15% of those line items for audit, and we are done with it. I mean, we're about 55% of our AP processes. AP processing is actually today going through this route of touchless processing. So automatically, this works very well for us. Process efficiency is another area. If you look at our invoices, our customer invoices, they used to finance review and approval before they were generated, and there was standard set of checks that the finance analyst used to do. There was a list of some 20 checks that a financial analyst would do. Today, what we have done is we've done an RPA, and we've put all those 20 checks digitally. And if any of those checks fails, or if the robo is unable to do any of these checks, then it pushes that invoice to a manual queue, which goes to the financial analyst. Otherwise, it automatically goes through, and touchlessly the invoice gets generated for the clients. That's another 40-45% of our invoices are today able to go through that, and that number is steadily going up. So process efficiency improves. Rather than taking a day, now it's taking a few minutes. Digital insights, I think a lot has been said about it. For whether it is predicting the DSO behavior, payment behavior of a client. Now, you guys did one project with us where using NIA as a platform, you helped us build a predictive analytics on something which uses payment behavior of the client from the past, uses some seasonal data, and also picks up information about the clients, credit rating and other things from Bloomberg and some of the other portals, and then does a computation and tells me that there is a chance that this client might not pay. So there's a huge amount of benefit that we are driving out of that, and we immediately go back and tell the sales guys to put pressure on the client for releasing payments early and things like that. And we've saved a lot of money using that by predicting that a client is likely to go and file for Chapter 11 or bankruptcy, or are likely to have some sort of a payment trouble. Compliance is another area where a lot of stuff has been automated, where a lot of governments, thankfully for us, also have now started exposing APIs on the web. So for example, GST filing returns in India, you can pretty much automate the entire thing from your SAP system to filing of the GST return. So each of these areas, there are a significant amount of work that can be done.
Thanks, Deepak. Very. I think there are so many applicabilities, right, of this technology, and that's already been proven. If we were to go after listing the use cases, there are probably hundreds and hundreds of use cases in F&A where automation has been deployed and delivered, and which has consistently given value. So the issue is, well, it's not about necessarily the areas to go after. I think many of them, I'm sure everybody in this forum can actually, take a pen and a paper and list them down. I think the challenge comes down to not even technology. Technology will do the job. It's about how do you really navigate, right, a program like this? How do you really set up an automation program for success, if you will, right? So if you look at the finance organization and let's say CFO, how do you see this role, playing a more strategic, role as it relates to automation-related efficiencies and driving this program? Because what we've also seen, Deepak, is because F&A has taken the first step of adopting automation, they have kind of become the champions of automation for the organization itself, right? So many of the customers where we have seen this start in finance have been asked to actually set up the center of excellence. They have been asked to work with IT to figure out how to roll this out across many other functions. So they're actually getting into areas they probably didn't ask for. So with this backdrop, how do you see CFO's role changing, and how do you see them playing a strategic role in driving automation in the organization?
Oh, absolutely, Satish. I think CFOs over the last couple of years have played a very pivotal role. And as we always say, that CFO's role has now, over a period of time, also transformed into a strategy role, whereby they are also not only in the execution of the strategy, but also formulation of the strategy is something that they have been doing along with the CEOs, and taking some load off the CEO. So in that backdrop, I think finance guys and the entire CFO's organization can become some sort of an anchor point to start the automation. And believe me, automation journey of any organization doesn't need to start with a big bang. You can start with very simple Excel macro based automation, if you will, that costs near to nothing. And that's how we started as well. We hired a couple of people, just two people, who were experts at writing Excel macros and doing low-level automation based on screen captures and things like that. And for the first 3 or 4 months, that's all we did. And then we realized that there's a huge amount of value that can be driven out of this. And then they said, okay, let's see what more can we do. And then that's how the conversation starts. So my suggestion to everybody on the call is that you don't have to necessarily look at a big bang approach for doing automation. Just start with something very simple. And and thankfully these days, 3 years back, many of these tools were not available on a pay per use kind of a basis. Now, in fact, even that is also very easy. You like it, you use it. You don't like it, you give it back to the vendor, right? You don't have to really make any upfront investment nowadays. So I think there's a lot that that finance guys can lead this from the automation from the front on this, and start with very small set of automation. Start with maybe a tool that works for you. Spend a little bit time looking at it. You don't have to do a full-fledged study, because it works. These tools work they work for a number of organizations, so you don't really have to go through a whole process of doing reference checks and things like that, because your initial investment is very low. That's the thing that gets me excited very much, for the future of of finance, and the transformation that finance function as a whole can achieve using automation as a technology.
Fantastic, Deepak. I think just to add on to this, there are, in fact, if you look at Assisted as well, there is something called as Community Edition, which basically is a free version of this product, and many vendors have this, right? Which is out there where people will be, you will be able to download, your employee base will be able to download. Fairly simple, as Srikanth also mentioned, this is not tech-heavy tool. It's a very business-friendly tool in that sense. Any one of you can download. There'll be some very quick how-to videos you can go through and play with it, and you will get a sense of what the value is, and from there, as Deepak said, build on some initial small successes that you start seeing. So wonderful. So shifting gears, Deepak, coming to the Infosys world, right? Infosys obviously has led the way on many things, including being probably one of the most resilient organizations, adopting automation and adopting also infrastructure. And this is something that's been part of Infosys strategically invested for many decades, right? And obviously it has helped us to also tide through this COVID as well. So now if we were to look forward, let's say another year, 2 years or beyond, how do you see automation and RPA playing an important role in transforming Infosys as an organization, going beyond finance and accounting, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, our IT organization can benefit a lot from it. And there's a lot of tickets that they handle. I think about 25,000-30,000 tickets that they handle on a monthly basis. And if you can pump in a bit of automation there, try to do a self-service instead of a room service kind of a model, as I always call it, and push the users to do a self-service than a room service thing. Automatically a lot can be saved. For example, all of your password reset and those kind of queries are now today being handled through a chatbot. So similarly, other areas like in HR, my leave application, what happens if I do this? Can I take these many leaves? Can I take those many leaves? Kind of a thing. All of those things, chatbots can be implemented for quite a bit. So HR is another area where I believe there's a lot that can be done in terms of automation. Of course, you can't take out the human touch. But today, what is happening is that the HR functions are so busy answering the routine, mundane queries of the employees that the function that they are supposed to play, which is provide a healing touch to an employee, is something that they're missing out on because they don't have bandwidth available. So if you take out some of that bandwidth available from them, you can repurpose that bandwidth to for them to provide that healing touch to the employees that that the employees need, especially in these kind of situations or these kind of times that we are living in today. Similarly, IT, like I said, can benefit a lot from automation. Anyways, let me just take a stop here, and I think Ganesh has a set of questions for us.
Yeah,
Ganesh, why don't you go ahead and
yeah,
ask your
yeah,
questions?
yeah. Yeah, thank you, Deepak, because there are a few questions here. So I think Satish and Deepak, if you could, just answer them. So the first one is basically from Vinayak Balamkar. I think we may not have touched upon this specifically, but I think it's very relevant. With most of the business moving digital, security aspect is becoming, a very important area. As a service and product company, how do we ensure we are delivering secured products and services? Any plans to bring security as a service along with the product and service offer? A nice little question, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll ask Guru or Satish, one of these guys. Because
Yeah,
Satish
sure,
does
sure.
this for a
Guru
living,
and
so
Satish,
Satish is
yeah,
probably the best guy to answer this.
yeah.
Yeah. Speak to
Go ahead,
it.
Satish.
Okay. See, I think
You're on mute, Satish. Yeah, Satish. Yeah.
Satish, we are unable to hear you. Guru, do you want to get a go at it while Satish sorts out his connection problem?
Looks like Satish is having a bad connection. So I think on the
Yeah, go ahead.
question of security, of course, absolutely important. Satish, you're back? That's fine. So I think, see, being a product company, right? I mean, I'm talking only of EdgeVerve now, right? I'm not talking of Infosys per se. And so EdgeVerve, what is we ensure product security is core to our, right, all the products we offer. For example, our bots will need to have encryption, ability to manage passwords in an way, all of that stuff that comes with any expectation of a product like that. So we are compliant with all of the necessary certifications around what our product has to offer, all of the encryption standards, everything else. But if your question is, does EdgeVerve offer security as a service? No, because we are in the product business. But of course, the larger group company, Infosys, has a very expansive security offering, a specific cyber security offering, network monitoring, very expansive set of security offerings is offered out there. But as a product company, we have to ensure we hit all the checkboxes around product security, the compliances, the certifications. We have an internal product security team that ensures most of our products have not just a tick mark, but also go above and beyond in terms of product certifications. Satish, I see you're back.
Yeah, sorry, the connection just gave on me. But I think Guru just answered it. See, obviously, the broader Infosys as an organization has security practices and a lot of advisory services around security and one. And from a product standpoint, this is one of the pillars of our go-to-market, which is around to making sure every single product that we offer, especially around automation, is completely secure. If 25%, as I mentioned, of FNA, of automation is FNA, then you can imagine how much of security scrutiny has already gone into these products. So it is pretty huge.
Okay. Yeah. So the next question, I don't know whether I've got this right. Out of the 4 areas that we talked about, possibly in maybe Guru Raj's presentation, I think, I'm not sure, or maybe it could be in Shrikant's. Out of the 4 areas, which one gives us the highest ROI? Is it company specific or sector specific? This is a question from Aditya Mishra.
Yeah, Ganesh, I think he's talking about the 4 areas that I touched upon: effort reduction, process efficiency, digital insights, and compliance. So I think the question and the answer actually is there in the question itself. It is actually company specific, but believe me, the easiest to measure is going to be effort reduction, and the most complex or most difficult to measure in terms of ROI is going to be compliance. So the way we look at it at Infosys Finance is that we don't worry so much about the ROI, because as long as we are covering such initiatives in all of the 4 functional areas. So anytime when you are doing your automation strategy, please make sure that you have something around all of the 4 areas. Otherwise, you are going to end up becoming myopic in one specific area. So easiest to measure is effort, but compliance is the one that is going to give you actually the best benefit.
Yeah. So the next question is from Srini Boddu, is it, or Baddu? I'm not sure. What are the key outcomes or KPIs that we are ready to sign up for to implement RPA and AI within FNA for, let's say, a capital markets client? I think this is probably addressed to EdgeVerve team.
Satish, Shrikant, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm not sure Shrikant is around. See, I think not specific outcome based, I'm guessing, discussion that Guru mentioned earlier. And yeah, I think the KPIs are very specific to the areas that you would pick. As going back to what Deepak also mentioned, the low hanging fruit is the effort based. It is very easy to measure. It's very transparent in that way. It is black and white. So the outcome is easier to be, to discern and then figure out, what the KPIs should be around that. But as you move through other areas, it becomes a little more fuzzier, and we'll have to be a little creative about those KPIs. So I don't think there's one fit all beyond the effort reduction. There's no one fit all KPI. It has to be very specific.
Okay. The next question is from Mr. C.V. Raghavendra, who's probably keen to understand what are the key challenges faced by EdgeVerve while positioning digitization to senior executives. Basically, a sell-in point. How do you really sell in?
I think I can start there, and Satish, you can pitch in as well. I think the good news is it is not quite a struggle at all, right? We
Yeah.
spoke about the how the business resilience is pretty center in terms of strategy and how AI and automation can be the key levers, right? And I'll give you an example. There was a meeting with the CEO. I think it was Gulf Air. This was, of course, during the time that we were still traveling and able to meet people physically. And I have never ever before seen a CEO be present in a 90-minute whiteboarding session with something as technology oriented as automation and AI. Right? It was all about whiteboarding possibilities and saying where can automation come. How it can help with, say, a meal planning process for an airline, or how you can manage an airport better and stuff like that. Right? So the point is, this is not a hard sell at all. I mean, everybody today is able to sit up and pay attention to what can AI and automation do for you. So it is really up to us on how you tell the story, how you envision the possibilities, how you paint the possibilities to the right level, right? If you're talking to a CEO, of course, you have to use that language and talk about what this technology can do for you. But if somebody is a process expert, then you have to use that lingo. But it is honestly not a struggle. It is the only struggle is to make sure the ROI comes in and kicks in and everything else. But to get a foot in the foothold, get a foothold is not hard at all in today's world, quite honestly.
Okay. I thought I'll pose a question. My question to Deepak, which has always been a challenge in automation. How do you really foresee? Whenever automation happens, obviously roles change dramatically. There is always a segregation of duty concept in financial accounting and controls and compliance. So how do you really take care of this challenge when automation completely changes the roles and responsibilities of people, especially in finance?
Simple answer, Ganesh, you don't. What you take a look at is what are the points that you can automate and what are the points that you don't want to automate. So, for example, there are let's say you have controls, and we are a company that has to also comply with Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and you have to give certification every year and get audited for SOX every year. So there are specific key points which are basically system detective and system preventive controls. Now, if you have system preventive controls, you need to make sure that you stay on top of them, and you need to take through data checks. You have to verify and make sure that those system preventive checks are not getting violated. Number one. Number two, if you have the process of a maker checker, and then what you typically do is you automate one of the roles. You automate either the role of the maker or the role of the checker, so that at least there is one pair of eyes that is looking at it. And usually you end up automating the role of a maker, and then you also build circuit breakers on top of that, for where in case there is a doubt, the robo actually behaves like a human. In case robot doesn't assume something and pushes it like a human will, so the robo actually pushes it back to a manual queue, where and a human being actually takes a look at it and decides what to do for that. An example that we've done where we use this concept is our employee claim processing. And we have a lot of employee claims, as you can imagine, with 250,000 employees and half of them traveling at any point of time. Now, we have a set of 25 rules that are built into our claim system, and every claim goes through each of these rules. At the end of these 25 filters, there is a score that comes. It's a composite score of any fraud or any wrong transaction being present in the claim. If that score is below a certain threshold, we don't review that claim. We automatically approve that claim, and then we pick up 10% of those claims for a post audit. So these are the kind of things that you can do. So you have to kind of use your imagination to build something which is foolproof from a audit perspective.
Yeah. Great. So I think there were a couple of more questions, but I think we are running out of time. So I will stop here. But just before I sign off, I think all these sessions, thanks to Gururaj, Shrikant, Satish, Deepak, I think what comes through very strongly is the symbiotic relationship of finance and technology. I would even dare say business, but since this session focused on finance, I would say that the technology platforms will have to embed itself in our function. And it's not just to reduce complexity or increase productivity, but it is to actually aid the business in growth and profitability. Because by reducing complexity and reducing, I would say, repetitive tasks, I think you will only strengthen the business further and allow the business to run free and achieve its growth and profitability targets. I think with just that, I would once again thank Gururaj Deshpande, Shrikant Dev, Satish Sitaramaya, and Deepak Balla for really taking us through a very engaging session. And I think at the end of this, I am pretty sure all the CFOs on this group will start, looking at their challenges in their respective businesses and see technology as the solution provider rather than it becoming, a very costly affair to really reduce complexity. Thank you very much once again
Thank you.
to
Thanks
all
for
of
having
you,
us.
as well as to the participants for having logged in. And I hope it was very useful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.